All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Budget School right here on Converge Media. Joined as usual by Kevin Schofield, SCC Insight. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm always up and at it for budget, man.
Budget,
You
man.
know what I'm
It's all
saying?
it's all about budget.
This is the school, this is the study up part, and then we're gonna get live into the action.
That's right.
Right. In a
Starting
bit.
next week.
Good stuff. All right. So last time we talked about the budget and the law, right?
Yep.
Today we're talking about the process.
We're talking about budget process, beginning to end.
Beginning to end.
Beginning to end. Yeah.
I know you're known for being wordy and nerdy. There's supposed to be a short show. You're talking about beginning to end.
That's it. We're done. Yeah.
All right. So let's jump right into it. When does the actual budget process start?
Well, yeah. So there's two interesting answers to that question. Number one is that the visible part of the process starts when the mayor delivers her budget to the city council, and that's scheduled this year to be September 27th. It's always, by law, supposed to be the last week of September. So that's coming up next week, and the mayor customarily gives a public speech about what's in the budget, her priorities, new investments and initiatives, and any of the big news she wants to call attention to. It's funny that in this process, we only typically see the mayor on like the first day and the last day of the visible part of the process, right? She delivers her budget at the beginning, and then she signs the budget when the city council is done, and we don't hear from her, at least publicly, in between. So if she has anything important she really wants to get out there to influence this process, she has to get out there on day one when she gives this big speech, right? But in reality, the budget process starts several months before that, really pretty much in early summer. Around June each year, each city department has to give the city budget office their sort of estimate of what their budget needs are going to be for the next year. So basically 6 months before, halfway through the year, they're already starting to plan for the next year's budget. Some years they also have to respond to specific requests from the mayor's budget, because if they know like revenues are going to be tight next year, she may say, okay, we just as a starting point have everybody cut their budget by 3%. We'll just do a little bit of tightening the belt, and that'll give us a little bit of money back that we can do things with. But in the meantime, over the summer, the city budget office is also working on revenue projections for all the taxes and fees and all the other sources of money coming into the budget, to understand how much money the city is going to have to spend all that, right? So by the end of the summer, all that information has been collected, and the mayor and city budget office are already meeting with department heads, kind of going through, maybe iterating a little bit, trying to figure out, okay, where do we really want to end up with a budget for your department for next year? And then that all sort of culminates in the mayor's budget proposal that she then hands off to the city council as her starting point for the budget.
So the city council works on this for 8 weeks?
Yeah, that's right. And that's pretty much all they work on for that time. So while they normally have all these other committees, during the budget season in the fall, they'll still have their Monday afternoon city council meeting and their Monday morning council briefing, but all the other committee meetings get shut down for that. And that's mainly because the central staff and all the aides for the city council members all have so much budget work to do, they really just don't have time for anything else. All the same people who are managing like all the land use stuff and all the transportation bills and all those things are the same people working on the land use budget bills, and for the Department of Construction and Inspections, and transportation budget bills for SDOT. So they just don't have really any bandwidth to do anything more than work on the budget for that time. Right. So in an emergency, they can actually schedule another committee meeting, but the council rules say that any other committee meetings that's scheduled have to first be approved by the council president and the budget chair to make sure that they're okay, that this isn't going to take away from anything that needs to happen for the budget. So the budget is sort of clearly the priority for this, and the bar is super high for doing anything else.
All right. So can you break down like what happens over these 8 weeks?
Yeah. So the budget process goes through 5 different phases, and we're going to walk through each of them. The first phase, which takes about a week, is all about the mayor's proposed budget, and that's what's going to happen next week. So this year, the budget, like I said, is being delivered on Monday, September 27th. Then on Wednesday through Friday of that week, the council has morning and afternoon sessions where they hear presentations about what's in the mayor's budget. A lot of the time it's about specific departments like SPD or SDOT or Human Services. They'll kind of walk through all those big departments. But they're also going to do some of those sessions on special topics across departments. For example, they're going to do one this year, next week, on homelessness that looks at what Human Services Department, Public Utilities, Office of Housing, SPD, Fire Department, and other departments are all doing as part of kind of this coordinated homeless response. And of course, how much that's all going to cost, right? So the council members are going to ask lots of questions and just kind of learn more about what it is that the mayor and the city departments are proposing to do next year.
So is it the department heads that give these presentations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in most cases, in these presentations, the department head of the relevant department is there, but it's actually the council's own staff that are leading these presentations. It would be a huge lift for them, the first time they saw the budget of the Monday of that week. So in truth, what's happening is that those council staff have been working with the mayor's office and the city budget office and these department heads for several weeks already to kind of understand what's going to be in the budget. So the council staff is already kind of in the know. They're sort of surprised by all this. So they can sort of, by the time the Wednesday presentations start, they've already pulled together a presentation about what's going on. And that's, the mayor's interest too, because she wants the best presentation she possibly can to educate the council about this stuff. So she wants all the staff to be really fully educated too.
So the mayor drops her budget.
Mm-hmm.
City council gets 3 days in presentation, and then what?
Yeah. So then we move on to what's called the the issue identification phase. And so during the budget presentations the previous week, the council members got to ask a bunch of clarifying questions, but this is when they really start to make a list of things that they don't like about this budget, or maybe things they want to add, or any kind of changes. If they want to add a new program, if they want to defund an existing one, move a program from one department to another. This is a time where they start to make a list of I think we should think about this and we should think about that. And this whole phase takes about 2 weeks, right? So the first week, the council central staff meet with each of the council members and their aides to hear kind of what's top of mind for them for each of these areas, and they compile a list. And then the council staff take all 9 council members' lists and sort of put it together in one list. And then they use that to put together a second round of presentations, where this time it's the council staff presenting to the council members saying, here's what you heard from all of you about the issues. Here's where there was overlap in the kinds of things that you said you were interested in. And here's kind of a little bit of color commentary about some of the options you may have for what you could do to address these kinds of issues, right? So where they hear common themes, they can prioritize those issues and ideas higher. We got this year, the 3 days of presentations are going to be October 13th through 15th, where the council members get to hear about all these ideas and consolidate lists and see where these kinds of overlap.
Yeah, I see here on the screen that there's a public hearing on the calendar for Tuesday the 12th.
Yeah, so in this 8-week budget season, the budget chair, Councilmember Mosqueda, has scheduled 3 different public hearings, standalone public hearings. Each of them could be, a couple different hours, and they're spread throughout the process. So at different parts in this process, the public has an opportunity to provide input. You can provide input at any time you want this by emailing your council members or calling their offices. But this is a time very publicly where you can sign up to speak to all 9 at the same time at one of these public hearing sessions. And Budget Chair Mosqueda said that her intent is to allow these standalone meetings, like the one on the 12th, to run as long as necessary so that everybody gets a chance to speak at these. In addition, she said, during the other kind of presentations that we talked about, the Wednesday to Friday meetings, she's going to allow about 20, maybe 30 minutes of public comment at the beginning of each of them, but just in the morning sessions, not in the afternoon sessions. But the big opportunity is really these public comments.
Yeah, we all know how public comment goes in this city.
Yeah. It's not always the most efficient way to get your ideas across.
Hey, it's open though. Yeah. All right, so basically the council's met, they've discussed, and then what? So
then we move on from issues to actually talking about what are possible budget amendments that the city council might want to make. And they work with the staff to write up formal proposed budget amendments, right? And it could be something on the revenue side where they say sort of we want to increase, or maybe in some alternate reality, decrease some tax. It could be on the expense side where they want to spend more on something, or maybe even spend less on something. Increase this tax or fee, reduce spending in the program. And so this is when these budget amendments are formally proposed by the council members, though honestly, a lot of them have already been worked on for weeks. Council members also start working on their budget work kind of in the middle of the summer, thinking about ideas that they might want to put forward. And so they've got some pretty early drafts. So at this point, a lot of the proposals, might have gotten firmed up by the budget issue discussion part. And this is when they officially get entered. So what happens is, again, the council staff go around and they collect these up from all the different council members. And then they'll do a third set of presentations, again, sort of by theme, by department, where they sort of consolidate all the, let's say, SDOT proposed budget amendments together, and they'll just kind of walk through them. And they'll be able to call out that way when different council members have proposed either the same thing or maybe kind of overlapping or even potentially conflicting. It's like, well, we could do this budget amendment or this budget amendment, but we really can't do both of them. Maybe one of the council members says, let's increase the budget for this thing, and another council member says, let's decrease it. Well, they can't do both of those. So this is a time to go flesh out, hey, we've got, here's what everybody is proposing. So they get to hear another 3 days of presentations, just flesh all that out.
I mean, it sounds kind of crazy. All those different proposals, like all together. I know you would know this. Like, how many?
Yeah. So altogether, the proposed amendments is going to be in the hundreds of them. At the end of the day, the final budget is going to have somewhere between 100 and 200. A lot of them are kind of really little things. It'll be, a few really big things, small tweaks on the budget, moving little bits of money around, funding new programs. But it's going to be somewhere around 100 to 200.
So what's the process to getting all of that narrowed down?
Yeah, so that's really where the next part of this comes next. But to understand how that works, we need to take notice of one more thing that happens when they're talking about these budget amendments. In those 3 days where they walk through all the budget amendments, after every one, Councilmember Mosqueda is going to ask, are there any other council members who want to co-sponsor this amendment? They've all been sponsored by one, maybe more than one council members, but it's an opportunity in a public forum for the other council members to say, yeah, I'll co-sponsor that too. And it's kind of a way for them to do a straw poll about how much each of these amendments has kind of broad consensus support, right? And that doesn't mean at the end that those council members who even say they're going to co-sponsor it are necessarily going to vote for it. And anyone who doesn't say they're going to co-sponsor it may still vote for it. They may not vote against it. So it doesn't necessarily mean how the final votes are going to end up on these things, but it does give an idea like, okay, is this a popular thing or is this not a popular thing? And that's really important because what happens from here is that Mosqueda has to go through and create what's called a balancing package, right? And the balancing package starts with the mayor's budget and then layers on top of that a set of the council's budget amendments that she believes have consensus support from the council. And she does that over 2 weeks where there's really no public meetings at all by meeting individually with each council member and gathering their feedback on the amendments, which ones they support, which ones they don't support, which ones are their priorities. And it's particularly important for the council members who represent districts. So like Councilmember Morales, who represents District 2. What's top of her list are things she really wants to get in there for District 2, right? So Mosqueda is collecting up all the information. She has a sense of like which ones have consensus support, which ones don't, and she builds a package starting with the mayor's budget and then layering that subset of the amendments on top of that she believes will have a very broad set of support among the council members and just won't be contentious.
So my question, why do they call it a balancing package?
It's a super good question. And it's because the other requirement for the balancing package is that it maintains a balanced budget. Remember we talked about when we were talking about the law that applies to the budget, that the council is required to have a balanced budget. That means the thing that they pass at the end of this process has to be balanced. But the way they work this process is The mayor's budget, as she proposes it, is balanced. And then at every moment through this entire 8 weeks, the official thing that's on the table as the budget in front of the council is balanced. So if they've gone through this process of, the presentations, the issues, the proposing all these budgets, there's still not been any formal changes to the mayor's budget. The mayor's budget is still like the definitive thing that's on the table. And now when Councilmember Mosqueda rolls out her balance package, she's saying, okay, we're going to replace the mayor's proposed budget with this new one, right? And that's also balanced. So every single moment, they never have a proposed budget in front of them that isn't balanced, right? And we're going to see that they continue that on all the way through the end. Because if they ever let it get unbalanced, then they have to go figure out, okay, how do we make sure that by the end of this, we're back to being balanced again? But if they never let it get out of balance, it solves a whole bunch of problems just procedurally for them.
Yeah, that's wild. So basically, the chair puts out her balancing package.
Yep.
And of like what she thinks most council members would agree on.
Yep. Yeah. Thinks that it won't be contentious. That really there's consensus support for that.
So it pays for somebody to have a good kind of relationship then with the chair.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I see.
So then with this, they're almost done, right? The council members get one more shot at making amendments, kind of round 2 of amendments, and this time they're amending, instead of the mayor's budget, the balancing package, right? But there's 2 new rules that come into play here, right? As we get really close to the end here. First, any new amendment must have 3 council members co-sponsoring it, right? So that makes sure that no one council member can kind of monopolize the process and just throw a bunch of ton of stuff out there, or stuff that nobody supported the first time. They can't do reruns. You got to be at least 3 council members saying, yeah, we should have a discussion of this before it gets out. And then the second rule is any amendment that gets proposed at this point has to be what they call self-balancing. If it spends more money, it has to find that money somewhere else in the budget. So any amendment that they adopt at this point can't take the balancing package out of balance, right? So all the way to the end of this point, any change that they make will still make this a balanced budget, right? And that keeps them sort of in the safe zone for doing it. So it's a very clever way of managing this process. So they make sure that the budget they end up at the end is something that's legal. So this whole process comes to head on sort of 2 big days, November 18th and 19th, and really it's just one day. It's Thursday, November 18th, when the budget committee, for the first time in this 8-week process, actually votes on something, right? First time, and it's like the end of week 8. End of week 8, they finally sit down and say, we have a balancing package on the table. We've got some more self-balancing amendments that we may want to consider in front of that. We're going to sit down and we're actually going to vote on this stuff and see if we can assemble the final package that we want to do, right? So they've gone through all this time of talking about this stuff, and now they're finally actually going to vote, and it's a marathon session. The 18th is an exhausting marathon session. It starts at 9:30 in the morning, and they try to get it all done in one day. If they can't, they've got the 19th to kind of slop over to, but they really try to get it all done in one day.
Man, that's a lot of talk. Hopefully, a lot of work. And then it looks like it's not even a sprint session there at the end.
Yeah. And the last phase, final phase, Monday, last Monday is the day where they just wrap it all up. And in the morning, Monday morning, the budget committee meets one last time. And, by now they've got their final budget package, and they, over the weekend, their staff have all tied a bow around it, made sure all the numbers really add up and they didn't miss anything. They almost always, just because like I said, there's up to 200 different parts of this thing. There's always 1 or 2 last minute details they have to. So they might pass 1 or 2 last little budget amendments on something just to clean up that, and then they pass the thing out of committee on Monday morning, and then Monday afternoon in the weekly full city council meeting, they officially approve the budget and they send it off to the mayor for a signature. right? And then they all go off for a really nice Thanksgiving dinner.
Man, that sounds intense.
It is. It is very intense. This process starts out very slow at the beginning, with a lot of presentations and a lot of downtime between them, with the council budget chair and their staff running around doing shuttle diplomacy, gathering up a bunch of information, and then trying to consolidate that into more presentations. And then they get in these budget amendments, and it really sort of becomes very concrete, and they're talking about specific proposals, and it ends with this kind of marathon sprint of final votes on everything, and they push it out the door.
Man, that's a lot. So the whole process starts next Monday.
It starts next Monday with the mayor's budget proposal, and it just takes off from there.
Well, I got a better understanding about it. No, like, I mean, sometimes I'm critical of city council. I'm like, man, when do these guys work? But it sounds like the budget process.
It is a process.
It's actually like a grind.
And it is a total grind. But there is this method to their madness, right? There are rules in place that guide them through this, so that they're forced to have important conversations, and that they actually end up at the end of this process with a budget that is balanced and is legal, and that hopefully the mayor will sign.
All right, good stuff. You've covered this. Tell us what's coming up in episode 4.
All right, next time we're going to roll up our sleeves and dive into a bunch of the numbers. We're going to look at the revenue side of the budget, all the money that's coming into the city.
Show me the money.
Show me the money, yeah. Then at the episode after that, we're going to flip it around and look at the expenses side, where all the money goes.
Keep the expenses. Just show me the money.
Okay, we'll do that next.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Episode number 3 of Seattle Budget School.